Have you ever considered the power of a name? Join me as we explore the profound depths within the weight of names.
Chapter 8. Quiet Invitations. The brownstone was awake, not restless, not defensive, just aware, like an old thing that had survived fire and decided it was done being surprised by pain. Rose sat at the narrow table near the back windows, sleeves rolled, jacket discarded over the chair. The surface in front of her was bare, except for a stack of thin, unmarked cards and a single pen that never left ink behind unless she willed it to. Across the room, Evelyn sat curled into her favorite chair, glass of wine balanced in one hand. The bottle rested open on the side table between them, the only one that had survived the attack. "You're quieter than usual," Evelyn said, watching Rose work. "I'm deciding who lives with the consequences," Rose replied without looking up. She selected the first card and set it apart from the others. Her thumb brushed the surface once, then a name appeared and vanished, sealed into the paper. "Earth," she said. "Gunnar. Regean. Darren." Evelyn nodded. "That tracks." "Gunnar because he has to be there," Rose continued. "Regean because she needs to see what neutrality actually costs. And Darren—" A faint smile touched Rose's mouth. "Because he can tell powerful people they're being idiots without making it personal." "That's a gift," Evelyn said. "It's survival," Rose replied. She moved to the next card. "Alfheim gets Syrien," Rose said. "Archivist. Old enough to remember when keeping secrets meant protecting people, not positioning for advantage." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "He'll listen." "He'll remember," Rose corrected. "That's more important." Another card slid forward. "Atherin," Evelyn prompted. Rose paused, just long enough for the weight of it to register. "Nezra," she said at last. Evelyn grimaced. "You're inviting ambition to a neutral table." "I'm inviting honesty," Rose replied. "Nezra doesn't pretend to want peace. That makes her predictable." The pen moved. The name vanished. "Concordia gets Commander Cale Varner," Rose continued. "He understands command without mistaking it for ownership." "And Merc Dusk?" Evelyn asked. Rose didn't answer immediately. Instead, she drew two cards from the stack and placed them side by side. "Merc Dusk doesn't get one voice," Rose said. "It never has." She tapped the first card. "A guild elder. Someone old enough to have watched the cycles repeat and learned when to stop trusting easy answers." Then she tapped the second. "An Argaz." Evelyn smiled. "There she is." "She's not there to represent authority," Rose said. "She's there to represent reality. What happens when councils fail? What survives anyway?" Evelyn tilted her head. "Human form or goblin?" Rose smiled faintly. "Her choice. Either way, it makes a point." She inscribed both names. The second card pulsed once, sharper than the rest, then settled. Silence fell for a moment as Rose surveyed the spread. "That's a dangerous room," Evelyn said quietly. "That's why it has to be the Shadow Realm bar," Rose replied. "Neutral ground, enforced rules. Everyone understands what it means to cross that threshold." "And the divide," Evelyn added. "Human side, shadow side." Rose nodded. "Regean and Darren will need invitations just to step through. That alone will keep them alert." "And Silas?" Evelyn asked. Rose leaned back at last, eyes drifting toward the street beyond the windows. "Silas will complain," she said. "Then he'll host it anyway." "You trust him," Evelyn said. "I trust the bar," Rose replied. Silas just refuses to let it fail. She gathered the cards into a single stack, squared them carefully, and finally reached for her glass. These aren't requests, Rose said softly. They're quiet warnings. Something fundamental is shifting. Anyone who ignores that is choosing to be left behind. Evelyn raised her glass. To meetings that don't make headlines, she said. Rose clinked her glass gently against it. To neutrality, she replied, before someone decides to test it. The brownstone hummed low around them, wards settling into place, old foundations remembering what it meant to protect the people inside. The invitations rested in Rose's hands. And somewhere down the road, in a bar that existed because war had failed too many times, the space between worlds prepared, once again, to matter. Chapter 9. Recognition. The door slid shut behind them with a soft, final sound. The room was dim, lit only by low, amber panels along the walls. Aeliana's space was quieter than the rest of the facility, deliberately so. No active wards humming at full strength, no alerts, just enough magic woven into the stone to keep nightmares out and rest in. Gunnar stood just inside the threshold, unsure where to put himself now that there was no crisis demanding posture or command. Aeliana noticed. She set her staff carefully against the wall, first, unstrapping it instead of letting it fall where it usually rested. Then she turned back to him. You don't have to stand guard, she said gently. He let out a slow breath. Habit. She crossed the room and reached for him, fingers sliding into his hand with quiet certainty. Not leading this time, just anchoring. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, neither of them rushing to define what this was. The weight of the day still clung to them. Decisions? Near misses? Lines crossed carefully. Gunnar's thumb brushed over her knuckles. You scared me back there, he admitted. She smiled faintly. I know. You don't usually drop. I usually don't let myself, she replied. She guided him to sit, then joined him, close enough that their shoulders touched. No armor between them, no titles, just the steady presence of another living being in the same room. For a while, they said nothing. The silence wasn't empty. It was decompression. Aeliana rested her head briefly against his shoulder, eyes closed. Gunnar let himself lean into it just a fraction, enough to acknowledge the support without demanding it. Eventually, she straightened. I should put the staff away properly, she said. It shouldn't be this close while I'm tired. He nodded. I'll wait. She stood, moving unhurriedly, crossing the room to where the staff rested. She lifted it with both hands. Familiar weight. Familiar balance. And the moment her fingers closed around the grip, the world fractured. Light didn't flash outward. It surged inward, collapsing through her like a tidal pull. Her knees buckled instantly, strength ripped from her as if gravity had tripled. Gunnar was on his feet before the sound of her hitting the floor finished, echoing, catching her halfway down. Aeliana. She couldn't answer. Her vision tore open. A child. Not a child. Too tall. Too long-limbed. A body aged forward by force. Joints awkward. Balance uncertain. 5 years old in flesh. 6 months in mind. The confusion hit first. The terror second. A baby's needs trapped in a body that didn't know how to ask. Then stone. A shattered trading floor. Banners torn. Crates overturned. A traitor sprawled broken on the ground, eyes glassy, blood dark against familiar markings. No witnesses, no justice, just consequence. Fire. A cavernous chamber, rivers of lava churning below iron walkways. Heat roared like a living thing. Syrien stood at its center. Still? Controlled? One hand resting at her side like a ruler awaiting tribute. She wasn't raging, she was planning. The vision ripped again. Maelorion, his chamber. Seals flaring. Runes straining. The ancient guardian stood alone, hands braced against a table etched with realms and ley lines, his expression tight with pressure. Not fear. Urgency. Something was moving faster than preparation. The visions collapsed. The staff went inert. Aeliana gasped as air slammed back into her lungs, body trembling violently now that the weight had released. She clutched at Gunnar's jacket, grounding herself in something solid and real. "I've got you," he said quietly, voice steady, absolute. "Stay with me." She nodded weakly, swallowing hard. "It wasn't a prophecy," she managed. "It was recognition. Pieces. Present. Not arranged." Gunnar's jaw tightened. "The child?" "Yes." Her voice broke just slightly. "Aged by force. Mind left behind. And Syrien." "She's building something," Aeliana whispered, "and Maelorion knows. He's running out of time." Gunnar helped her back onto the bed, staying close, one hand never leaving her. "So," he said after a moment, "the universe finally noticed we stopped pretending." Aeliana nodded once, exhausted. "Yes." The staff lay where it had fallen, quiet now. Harmless, as if it hadn't just cracked open the future. Outside the room, the facility slept. Somewhere else, a child who was not a child cried without knowing why. And the balance of realms shifted, not with thunder or fire, but with the quiet cruelty of inevitability. Gunnar waited until her breathing steadied, until the tremor in her hands eased and the weight of whatever had passed through her stopped echoing quite so loudly in the room. Only then did he stand. The staff lay where it had fallen, angled against the floor, its surface dull now as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. Gunnar looked at it for a long moment before reaching down. Careful, respectful, but not reverent. He lifted it easily, testing the balance in his hand. The weight was familiar enough, but the silence coming off it now felt intentional, like a thing that had spoken out of turn and decided to say nothing more. He turned it once, then again. "All right," he said quietly, not looking at Aeliana. "If you've got something else to say, now's the time." The staff did nothing. Gunnar gave it a small, deliberate shake. Not rough, not gentle either. "Thought so." He examined the runes along its length, eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't a guardian, but he knew weapons. He knew tools, and he knew when something had acted without permission. "You don't get to drop her like that," he said, voice low and even. "Not without answering for it." Still nothing. He exhaled through his nose, a sound halfway between irritation and reluctant respect. "Figures." Gunnar carried the staff to its rack and seated it properly, locking it into place with a firm, practiced motion. He checked the seals twice, once out of habit, once out of instinct. Only then did he turn back. Aeliana was watching him now, eyes clearer, the worst of the shock past. There was a faint smile there. Tired. Fond. "You challenged it," she murmured. I don't like surprises, Gunnar replied. He moved back to her side and sat down close enough that their knees touched, especially the kind that knock you off your feet. She reached for his hand again, grounding them both. It showed me things, she said softly, but it didn't explain them. Good, he said. Means we're not done yet. The staff remained silent in its rack. For now. Gunnar leaned back slightly, letting his shoulder brush hers, eyes never leaving the place where the staff stood secured. Whatever had just noticed them could wait. Tonight he was watching the door. Chapter 10. Uninvited. The chamber was carved from black stone and old intent. Lava moved far below the walkways, slow and heavy, lighting everything in bruised orange and molten gold. Heat pressed upward in waves, making the air shimmer like a living thing. Every breath tasted like iron and ash. Syrien stood at the center of a rune circle, scorched into the floor. The symbols weren't decorative. They were functional. Anchors, locks, keys. A figure knelt in front of her, one of her priests. He was trembling, shoulders tight, head bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the stone. His hands were outstretched in apology or prayer. It didn't matter which. Syrien tilted her head, studying him like a flawed tool. You were given one task, she said softly. The priest tried to speak. A stutter of words. Panic. Excuses that spilled out too fast to mean anything. Syrian's expression didn't change. No, she said, almost gently. Not excuses. She lifted her hand. A pulse of power struck him, clean and precise. He didn't scream. He simply collapsed, as if whatever held him together had been switched off. His body hit the stone with a dull, final thud. Syrien looked down at him for a moment, then sighed, annoyed more than anything. I hate waste, she murmured. But I hate incompetence more. She stepped around the body like it was furniture. The rune circle brightened again as she resumed her work, fingers moving in small motions that shaped the air. Not a chant, not a performance, a calculation. The lava surged below, the glow rising and falling like a slow heartbeat. Then the chamber changed. Not temperature and not light. Pressure? Syrien stopped mid-motion. Her hand remained lifted, power coiled at her fingertips, but her eyes sharpened, the way they always did when she sensed something that wasn't supposed to exist. Something was here. No portal flare, no door, no ward breach. Just presence. She turned her head slowly toward the edge of the circle. And there, standing on the black stone, as if she belonged in it, was Aeliana Vale. Not fully physical, more like a silhouette cut from moonlight and memory. Her outline flickered, unstable, as if she had been dragged into the room through a crack in the world rather than stepping across it. Aeliana's eyes were wide, not fear, shock. The kind that comes when you realize you're standing somewhere you should not be able to reach. Syrian's lips curved into the smallest smile. Well, she said quietly. That's interesting. Aeliana's presence pulsed, struggling to hold shape. A faint glow wrapped around her like protective instinct, but it wasn't enough to make her solid. Syrien took one slow step closer. She didn't rush. She didn't attack. Predators didn't waste energy when prey was already trapped. No invitation, Syrien observed. No anchor. Her gaze swept over Aeliana's form, taking in the shimmer, the instability, the signature beneath it. Recognition. Syrian's smile sharpened. Aeliana's voice came out strained, like speaking through water. This isn't possible? Syrien's eyes brightened, pleased. That's what makes it valuable. The air tightened. Aeliana's silhouette flared once, fighting to remain. The glow around her spiked like a ward trying to slam a door shut. Syrien leaned in slightly, as if listening. And for a heartbeat, she wasn't looking at Aeliana. She was looking through her, past her, as though she could see the room Aeliana had come from, as though she could taste the warmth of another presence there. Syrien's head tilted. Ah, she whispered. So you're not alone. Aeliana's form snapped brighter, then fractured. The connection broke like glass under pressure. Moonlight vanished. The chamber returned to heat and lava and stone. Syrien stood alone again inside her circle, the priest's body cooling at her feet. She stared at the empty space where Aeliana had been. Then she laughed softly. Not loud, not happy, just satisfied. So, she murmured, the Guardian can see. Her fingers moved again, altering a line in the rune circle, adjusting the architecture of whatever she was building. That changes the timetable. The lava churned below, steady and relentless. And somewhere far away, in a quiet room that should have been safe, a staff had just betrayed how thin the walls between realms really were. Chapter 11 Arrives at the Den. Rose didn't bother announcing herself. The pack den didn't need ceremony, and neither did she. The wards recognized her the moment she crossed the perimeter, easing just enough to let her pass without the usual pressure check. That alone said something about how often she'd been here lately. Inside, the place was louder than usual. Not alarms, not arguments, life. Low voices, soft laughter. The unmistakable thump of something large, moving carefully, followed by a series of much smaller, clumsier sounds. Rose stopped just inside the entryway as one of the pack members glanced up from the main floor. They're in the den, he said, already smiling. With the puppies. Rose closed her eyes for half a second. Of course they are, she muttered, because nothing says interrealm diplomacy like a room full of half-grown murder floofs. She moved down the corridor, boots echoing softly against stone. The closer she got, the warmer the air felt, heavy with fur, heat, and that particular scent wolves carried when they were relaxed and absolutely convinced they owned the world. The den itself was open, wide, and deliberately low-lit. Alpha was sprawled on his side near the center, massive and golden, one eye open and tracking movement while pretending to sleep. Several puppies clambered over him with zero respect for personal space, tugging at fur, tails, ears. He tolerated it with the long-suffering dignity of someone who knew resistance was pointless. Gunnar sat on the floor nearby, back against the stone bench, one arm resting casually along Alpha's flank. A puppy had claimed his knee as a climbing challenge and was losing the battle badly. Aeliana sat cross-legged opposite him, sleeves rolled, laughter soft as she tried to disentangle another pup that had somehow managed to get itself half-knotted in her robes. Rose leaned against the doorway, arms folding. She watched the scene for a moment. The alpha of the pack, the guardian ambassador of Alfheim, and a pile of wolves who had absolutely no idea how much power was sitting on the floor with them. Well, Rose said dryly, breaking the moment, this is either the most wholesome security breach I've ever witnessed, or the worst possible time to talk politics. Gunnar looked up first, already grinning. You came to the wrong place if you don't like wolves, he said. Aeliana glanced up next, her smile softening when she saw Rose. You could sit, she offered, gesturing to the floor. They're very persuasive. Rose eyed the puppies as one of them made a valiant attempt to chew on Alpha's ear. I'll pass, she replied. I like my limbs where I left them. Alpha cracked one eye fully open and let out a low, amused huff. Rose smirked. See? Even he knows. She stepped inside the den fully now, her tone shifting just enough to signal this wasn't a social call. I need a word with you, she said, eyes on Aeliana. When you're done being adopted. Aeliana smiled, already understanding. Give us a moment. Rose nodded once, leaning back against the stone wall, arms crossed, watching the wolves with mock suspicion. Take your time, she added. Clearly, the fate of the realms can wait until nap time is over. Rose was in the middle of cataloging exit routes when she felt it. A soft, determined thump against her boot. She looked down. One of the puppies had detached itself from the chaos pile and was waddling toward her with the unshakable confidence of something that had never once considered the concept of danger. Its ears were still too big for its head, paws oversized, gait uneven in a way that suggested ambition far exceeded coordination. It stopped directly in front of her boot, sniffed, then sat. Rose stared at it. The puppy stared back, tail giving a single, hopeful wag. No, Rose said flatly. The puppy tilted its head. Behind her, Gunner's shoulders shook. It's already decided you're interesting. I am not interesting, Rose replied without looking away. I am a terrible life choice. The puppy leaned forward and pressed its nose against the leather of her boot, sneezed once, then tried to climb it. Rose inhaled slowly through her nose. Alpha, she said evenly. Call it off. Alpha didn't move. One golden eye opened just enough to observe the situation. He made a low, amused sound and closed it again. Aeliana bit her lip, clearly trying not to laugh. I don't think he outranks them right now. The puppy managed to get one paw on Rose's boot and looked up at her triumphantly, tail wagging harder. Rose looked down at it, unimpressed. You have no idea who I am, she told it. The puppy yawned, then promptly sat on her foot. There was a beat of silence. Rose sighed. I'm fine, she muttered, lowering herself just enough to crouch, one finger extended cautiously. But if you bite me, I will haunt you! The puppy immediately licked her finger. Gunner laughed outright this time. Well, he said, congratulations. You've been claimed. Rose shot him a look. Say a word and I'll destabilize your next 3 alliances. She straightened again. The puppy now apparently content to sit pressed against her boot, like it had always belonged there. Rose glanced at Aeliana, expression returning to business, even as the puppy remained glued to her. When you're ready, she said, I need to talk to you. Ambassador to whatever this is. Aeliana smiled softly. Give them a minute. Rose looked down at the puppy, then back up. Apparently, she said dryly, I don't have a choice. Aeliana rose smoothly and crossed the den before Rose could protest. She bent, scooped the puppy up with practiced ease, and the little thing immediately began to squirm, clearly offended by the interruption of whatever bond it thought it had just formed. There you go, Aeliana murmured, carrying it a few steps away. She set the puppy down gently beside Beta, who lifted her head, gave the pup a long-suffering look, and curled her tail just enough to create a pocket of warmth. The puppy wobbled, hesitated, then realized it had been relocated. It let out a small, indignant whine. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough. The puppy turned its head slowly and looked back at Rose, big eyes, drooping ears, absolute betrayal. Rose froze. For a fraction of a second, the mask cracked. Don't, she warned quietly. The puppy whined again. Beta huffed and settled, clearly done parenting for the moment. Aeliana stepped back beside Rose, lowering her voice. They do that, she said gently. It's how they guilt people into staying. Rose exhaled, arms crossing tighter. That is an underhanded tactic. Aeliana smiled, already turning serious as she met Rose's eyes. You wanted to talk. Rose nodded once, composure fully restored, gaze lifting from the puppy at last. Yes, she said, now that I've survived the ambush. Behind them, the puppy flopped dramatically against Beta's side, still staring at Rose like she had personally ruined its entire life. Rose did not look back. Mostly. Gunnar rose as they finished corralling the last of the puppies, giving Alpha a light pat along the shoulder before stepping away. Mess hall, he said. Bianca's already started. If we wait too long, she'll decide for us. Rose arched an eyebrow. Threatening me with food. Bold strategy. He gestured down the corridor instead of answering, and the three of them fell into step together. Rose matched their pace easily, eyes already scanning. She'd been to the packed den enough times to notice when something felt redirected. Their path didn't angle toward the command wing, no turn toward Gunnar's office, no pause, no debate, just straight past it. Rose didn't say anything at first. The mess hall was alive when they entered, not chaotic, productive. Bianca stood behind the long prep counter, sleeves rolled, hair pulled back, moving with the easy authority of someone who knew exactly how much food a room full of enhanced operatives required. She glanced up as they came in. You're early, she called. That's suspicious. We're starving, Gunnar replied. Try not to poison us. Bianca snorted and went back to work. They moved toward the far corner where the command booth sat partially enclosed. Not private, but insulated enough for conversations that mattered. Rose slid into the seat, first out of habit, then paused as she took in the space. No data pads already waiting. No active wall displays. No personal effects. She glanced back over her shoulder toward the hallway they hadn't taken. I thought we were going to your office, she said casually. Gunnar sat across from her, Aeliana beside him. We're not using it right now. Rose studied his face, sharp eyes catching the lack of deflection. That was new. Interesting, she said, not accusatory. Curious. Aeliana folded her hands on the table, posture already shifting into her ambassador role without fanfare. This works better for what Rose needs to discuss. Rose's gaze flicked to her, then back to Gunnar. Well, she said, leaning back slightly. Clearly something changed while I was busy being assaulted by puppies. Gunnar didn't smile. That told her more than a joke would have. Bianca slid a tray into a warmer nearby, the sound punctuating the moment. Rose exhaled once, slow and controlled. All right, she said. Mess hall it is. Her tone sharpened just a touch. Then let's talk about who gets invited and who doesn't. And for the first time since she'd arrived at the den, Rose stopped observing the room and focused entirely on the two people sitting across from her. Rose waited until Bianca moved down the line before she reached into her jacket. This time, she didn't pull out a stack. Just one card. She slid it across the table toward Gunnar. Unmarked, thin, quiet. That's yours, she said. Earth's seat. Gunnar didn't open it. He didn't need to. He turned it once between his fingers, then set it down in front of him. Shadow Realm bar, he said. Rose nodded. 2 days. Limited attendance. No weapons. Grim enforces it, not me. Aeliana's posture shifted subtly, shoulders squaring, presence settling into something more official. Not rigid. Intentional. Neutral ground, she said. Enforced neutrality, Rose corrected, which is the only kind that survives. She leaned back slightly, eyes moving between them. Before I deliver the rest, I want you both hearing the list at the same time. No surprises. She began calmly, methodically. Alfheim, Therion, archivist, old enough to remember when keeping knowledge meant protecting people. Aeliana inclined her head. That's appropriate. Atherin, Nezra. Gunnar's jaw tightened just a fraction, but he didn't interrupt. Concordia, Commander Cale Varner. Solid choice, Gunnar said. Rose continued. Merc Dusk will have 2 voices. That got both of their attention. 1 guild elder, Rose said. Someone who's seen cycles rise and collapse and knows when to slow things down. She paused. And Argos. Gunnar nodded immediately, like he'd been waiting for it. Rose noticed. Of course she did. She's not there to represent the guild, Rose went on. She's there because Merc Dusk isn't just charters and councils anymore. She speaks for the streets, for what decisions actually cost. Aeliana considered that, then nodded. She belongs in the room. Rose's gaze sharpened slightly, then moved on. Nethoria, she said. She let the word sit there on its own. Katrina, Rose continued. As Queen in exile. Attendance optional. Recognition non-negotiable. Gunnar exhaled quietly. I was hoping you'd include her. Rose met his eyes. I would have been disappointed in myself if I hadn't. Aeliana folded her hands on the table. You'll deliver that invitation personally. Yes, Rose said. And I won't frame it as a request. She gathered the remaining cards, squaring them with a precise tap against the table. Once these leave my hands, Rose said, the meeting exists whether anyone likes it or not. What happens next depends on who shows up and who doesn't. Bianca's voice carried over from the counter. Food's ready before anyone starts another war. Rose glanced over, then back at them. See? She said dryly. Even destiny respects lunch. But her tone shifted as she stood, weight settling back into her words. This meeting is going to change the board, Rose said. And Argos and Katrina being acknowledged in the same breath is going to make certain people very uncomfortable. Gunnar rested his hand on the invitation. Good, he said. Rose's mouth curved faintly. That, she replied, is usually how I know I'm doing it right. Rose pushed back from the table and stood. The invitation cards were gone now, but the weight of them hadn't left her hands. Decisions had a way of doing that. Lingering. Settling into bone. I'll handle the rest, she said, already stepping away from the booth. Gunnar nodded once. No questions. No conditions. Aeliana watched her go, expression thoughtful, already calculating the ripples that would follow. Rose crossed the mess hall without looking back. Bianca's voice faded behind her. The clatter of plates and low conversation receding as she passed into the quieter corridor beyond. At the junction, she slowed. To the left, the exit. Straight ahead, the command wing she'd expected to use and hadn't. To the right, the garage. Rose turned. Right. Not yet. But soon. She walked on, boots steady, expression set, already shifting from negotiation to delivery. 2 days. That was all the warning the realms were getting. The corridor swallowed her footsteps as the lights dimmed slightly behind her, the den settling back into its rhythm. And somewhere below, engines cooled, weapons slept, and neutrality waited to be tested again. Chapter 12: Hard Cells and Hot Engines. The garage was loud in a way that meant progress. Metal rang against metal. Tools hummed. The Wolfmobile sat center bay with its panels open, half disassembled and very clearly not appreciating the attention it was getting. Eli stood at one of the workbenches, tablet in hand, jaw tight, eyes flicking between readouts, and the two men absolutely committed to ignoring her warnings. "I'm telling you," she said, voice sharp, "if you reroute that again, you're going to trip the stabilizers." Darren, half inside the vehicle, didn't even look up. "It'll hold." Caleb, crouched near the rear assembly, snorted. "That's what you said last time, and then it screamed." "That was a warning hum," Darren replied. "Totally different." Eli pinched the bridge of her nose. "Machines do not warning hum. They malfunction." "That's just semantics," Darren said cheerfully. Rose stopped just inside the garage entrance and watched for a moment, arms folding as the scene unfolded exactly as expected. "Fascinating," she said dryly. I leave for one afternoon, and you turn my investment into a science experiment." All three heads snapped up. Darren slid out of the Wolfmobile, wiping his hands on a rag. "You sneak up on people for fun, don't you?" "Only when they deserve it," Rose replied. "Which, based on the noise, you absolutely do." Eli looked relieved to see her. "Please tell me you're here to stop them." "I'm here to redirect them," Rose said. "Stopping would be unrealistic." Caleb smirked. "Fair." Rose walked farther into the garage, eyes briefly scanning the Wolfmobile, the tools, the jury-rigged modifications that would definitely work and absolutely violate several laws of physics. She reached into her jacket. Darren's grin faded just a little. Nope. She hadn't even pulled the card out yet. "No," he said again, holding up a finger. "Whatever that is, I don't want it. If it involves sitting, listening, or pretending to care about politics, I'm out." Rose raised an eyebrow. "I haven't said anything." "You didn't have to," Darren replied. "I know that look." She finally withdrew the invitation and held it up between two fingers. "Shadow Realm Bar," she said calmly. 2 days, limited attendance, no weapons." Darren groaned. "Absolutely not." Eli blinked. "Wait, the shadow side?" "Yes," Rose said. Darren shook his head. "Hard pass. Last time I went somewhere like that, I got glared at by something with too many teeth and not enough manners." "That was grim," Rose said, "and you deserved it." Caleb laughed. "You definitely deserved it." Darren pointed at him. "You're not helping." Rose stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough to cut through the noise of the garage. "This isn't a council meeting," she said. "It's small, quiet, dangerous in the boring way." Darren crossed his arms. "That's the worst kind." "And Gunnar will be there," Rose added. Darren hesitated, just a fraction. "And Aeliana," Rose continued, "and Argaz." That got his attention. "And," Rose said, letting the hook sink in, "people who are very bad at lying and very good at making terrible decisions when no one competent is in the room." Darren eyed the card. "You're flattering me." "I'm recruiting you," Rose corrected. There's a difference." He sighed dramatically. "I hate suits." "No suits," Rose said. "No weapons, just honesty." That's worse. Rose smiled then. Not sharp, not threatening. Charming. You don't have to speak, she said lightly. Just listen. And when someone starts posturing, you do what you do best. Darren frowned, which is, make them uncomfortable without escalating, Rose replied. You're very good at that. He looked at the card again, then at Eli, who was watching with open curiosity. Well, she asked, you're going to go. I want to see Grim judge you again. Caleb nodded. For science. Darren exhaled hard. You're all terrible people. He took the card. Fine, he said. But if someone tries to recruit me into a cult, I'm leaving. Rose inclined her head. Reasonable boundary? She turned to go, already done with the negotiation. Behind her, Darren called out, Hey! She paused. If this goes sideways, he said, I get to say, I told you so. Rose smiled without turning around. I wouldn't dream of taking that from you. The garage noise swelled again as she left. Eli already barking new instructions and Darren staring down at the invitation like it might bite him. The meeting was getting real now, and Rose was almost done delivering the bad news. Chapter 13, The Director's Door. The facility was quieter than the den. Cleaner. Brighter. Controlled. Rose signed in without comment, badges recognizing her before the guards did. She walked familiar corridors, heels clicking softly against polished floors, the hum of servers and command systems threading through the walls. Regean's office door was closed. Rose knocked once. Sharp, polite, final. Come in! Regean looked up from a holo display as Rose entered, one eyebrow lifting slightly. I was wondering when you'd show up. Rose didn't sit. She crossed the room and set the invitation down on the desk, right in Regean's line of sight. 2 seconds passed, then Regean picked it up. Shadow Realm Bar, she read. That's a statement. It's a filter, Rose replied. Only people who understand what neutrality costs get through the door. Regean leaned back in her chair, studying her. Gunner knows? He's already accepted. That earned a nod. Then so do I. She glanced back at the invitation. You're building something dangerous. Rose met her gaze evenly. So is everyone else. I'm just making sure it doesn't collapse on innocent people. Regean exhaled slowly. 2 days? 2 days. Fine, Regean said. I'll be there. Rose inclined her head once. Respectful. Final. As she turned toward the door, Regean added, Rose. She paused. If this works, Regean said carefully, it changes everything. Rose didn't turn around. Yes, she said, that's the point. She stepped out into the corridor, already moving on to the next name. And the invitations were almost done. The consequences were just beginning. Chapter 14, Where Crowns Still Breathe. Murk dusk did not greet visitors. It measured them. The portal opened onto narrow stone streets, washed in low amber light, lanterns burning with steady flames that had outlasted fashions, rulers, and wars. The air smelled of smoke, iron, and something older, memory, pressed into brick and bone. Rose stepped through alone. No escort, no announcement. The wards registered her presence, rippled once, and settled. That alone would be noted. Ahead, the guild house rose from the street, like it had grown there rather than been built. Dark stone, reinforced corners, windows narrow and deliberate. This was not a seat of power meant to impress. It was one meant to endure. Argos waited on the steps, not human, not hiding. 3 feet of goblin sharpness and confidence, dark hair pulled back, posture loose in the way that meant she was absolutely aware of every eye on the street. 2 guild enforcers stood nearby, pretending they were scenery. Argos grinned. You walk like you expect to be challenged. I walk like I've already been challenged, Rose replied, and won. Argos snorted and turned without ceremony. They're inside. The guild house interior was cooler, heavier. Torches burned low along the walls, light catching on etched sigils worn smooth by time. Rose clocked exits, corners, shadows. Habit. At the central table sat Eldrick Vainhold. The guild elder's hair was white, his posture straight, his hands folded with deliberate stillness. His eyes were sharp and tired in equal measure. A man who had signed treaties knowing exactly how they would be broken. You're punctual, Eldrick said. Not approval. Observation. I respect places that survive, Rose replied. They don't tolerate waste. Eldrick's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Argos took a seat nearby, boots up on a bench like she owned the room. In practice, she did. Rose reached into her jacket and placed 2 invitations on the table. One slid toward Eldrick, one toward Argos. Shadow Realm Bar, Rose said. 2 days. Neutral ground. Limited attendance. No weapons. Eldrick studied the card without touching it. You're inviting trouble. Yes, Rose agreed. Contained. Argos picked hers up immediately, flipping it once. About time someone said things out loud. The room shifted then. Not sound. Pressure. Rose turned. Katrina stood near the far wall, half in shadow, half in lantern light. No crown, no armor, no insignia. It didn't matter. The shadows did not cling to her. They waited. Queen, even here. Rose inclined her head. Not deeply. Not submissively. Or recognition. Katrina, she said. Thank you for seeing me. Katrina regarded her for a long moment. Then, without a word, she turned and walked toward the inner corridor. Rose followed. No one else moved. The inner chamber was smaller and older, stone walls etched with sigils from before the guild had names for them. A single lantern burned low, its light bending inward. Katrina stopped and turned. Here, without witnesses, the weight was undeniable. You didn't come to persuade me, Katrina said. No, Rose replied. I came to acknowledge you. Most avoid that. Most benefit from pretending your crown vanished, Rose said evenly. I don't. Silence stretched. Say it, Katrina said. Rose removed the final invitation and she did not place it down. She held it out. This is not a summons, Rose said. It's recognition. Sovereign to sovereign. Katrina read the card. Shadow Realm Bar. Neutral ground. Enforced neutrality. No councils. No weapons. No illusions. And my attendance? Optional. Katrina looked up. Then why invite me? Because if you are not named, Rose said calmly, everything decided in that room is already a lie. That landed. Katrina stepped closer, close enough for the air to shift. You know what happens if I walk into that bar. Yes. Fear, resentment, accusation. Rose's mouth curved faintly. Those things follow truth. A breath passed. Katrina took the invitation. I will decide, she said. But understand this, Rose. I do not come to ask for my realm back. I know, Rose replied. I come when it is time to restore it. That, Rose said, is why I'm doing this now. Katrina inclined her head. Not gratitude, recognition. When you leave, Katrina said, you will be blamed for what follows. Rose smiled slightly. I'd be offended if I weren't. Katrina turned away. The conversation was over. When Rose returned to the main hall, Eldrick Vainhold was watching her carefully. He did not ask. He simply nodded once. Argos grinned, sharp and knowing. You said her name. Yes, Rose replied, out loud. Eldrick finally picked up his invitation. Then Merc Dusk will be represented. Rose inclined her head. That's all I needed. She turned toward the exit. Behind her, Merc Dusk resumed its low, steady rhythm. Deals whispered. Fires burned. History adjusted its grip. And somewhere between Shadow, Street, and Crown, a meeting that could reshape realms had just become inevitable. Chapter 15, Hands in the Ash. Atherin was not a realm right now. It was a project. The portal opened onto a reconstruction corridor cut straight through a ruined district. Stone dust hung in the air, turning the twilight light into a haze. Human engineers in worn uniforms shouted measurements over the grind of machinery. Elven wardsmiths anchored scaffolding with glowing sigils that pulsed in time with the lift cranes. The 5,077th Engineer Battalion moved through it all like they belonged, because at this point, they did. Some guided teams clearing rubble. Others supervised the laying of reinforced barriers while Atherin soldiers watched, learned, and then repeated the motions until muscle memory replaced panic. Elves and humans weren't helping. They were training a broken realm. How to stand again. Rose stepped through alone and paused just long enough to take it in. No banners. No court. No throne room waiting politely for diplomacy. Atherin didn't host visitors right now. It put them to work, or pushed them out of the way. Rose chose the third option. She moved through the corridor with purpose, boots crunching on grit, coat pulled close against the soot-heavy air. People noticed her, of course they did, but no one stopped her. Some faces recognized her and decided they didn't want the conversation. Smart. She didn't go looking for Lysandra, not because she couldn't find her, because this meeting was quiet, and Lysandra's world right now was loud and bleeding and public. If Rose told her, it would become a thing. A discussion. An argument. A political event. Rose didn't want an event. She wanted a chair filled by the right person. So Rose found Nezra. The training yards were carved out of scorched stone, still marked with old blast scars. Mixed instructors, human and elven, ran Atherin squads through rotations, not just fighting, command, leadership, under pressure. Who calls the retreat? Who holds the line? Who keeps people alive when ego wants glory? Nezra stood among the trainees, not leading, learning. Armor scuffed, hair tied back, sweat and ash on her brow. Her eyes tracked every instruction like her life depended on it, because in Atherin it did. A human instructor's voice cut through the yard. Again, slower. You rush. Your people die. Nezra reset without complaint. Rose waited. Because Rose actually understood timing, despite recent evidence to the contrary. When the drill broke, Nezra stepped aside to grab water, shoulders rising and falling with controlled breath. Then she saw Rose. The tension in her posture shifted, not fear, recognition. You're out of place, Nezra said, voice low. So are you, Rose replied. Nezra's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Fair? Rose kept her voice quiet enough that it wouldn't carry. I'm delivering an invitation. Nezra's eyes narrowed. To whom? To you. That landed. Nezra didn't move for a beat. Rose reached into her jacket and drew out a single card. Unmarked. Heavy paper. No seal. No flourish. Quiet authority. She didn't wave it around. She held it between them like a knife, presented hilt first. 2 days, Rose said. Shadow Realm Bar, neutral ground, limited attendance, no weapons. Nezra took the card but didn't look down yet. Lysandra doesn't know. No, Rose said. And she shouldn't. Nezra studied her. Why me? Rose didn't flatter, she didn't soften it. Because you're the one who has to live with what your father was, Rose said. And you're the one putting in the work. To become something else. Nezra finally looked down at the invitation. Read it once. Then a second time. You're asking me to step away from this? She said, gesturing faintly at the training yard. The rebuilding. The constant grind. I'm asking you to step into a room where people will decide what happens to realms like yours, Rose replied, whether you're there or not. Nezra's jaw tightened. And if I'm there, I represent Atherin? Rose's eyes sharpened. No, you represent your claim, your perspective, your truth. Don't pretend to carry the whole realm on your back. Lysandra already does that. She doesn't need you doing it too. That hit harder than any speech. Nezra's grip tightened on the card. And if she finds out... Rose's expression didn't change. Then you tell her the truth. What truth? That you went to prevent the next war, Rose said simply. And you didn't ask permission, because permission is how people delay until it's too late. Nezra stared at the card, then looked back toward the yard where Atherin soldiers were resetting for the next drill. Humans and elves moved among them, correcting, training, rebuilding them from the inside out. Nezra exhaled slowly. Fine, she said. I'll go. Rose nodded once. No victory lap. Good! Nezra's voice dropped even lower. Who else is invited? Rose didn't answer, not because she couldn't. Because this wasn't the place, and Nezra wasn't stupid. Enough, Rose said. And not a soul more. Nezra held Rose's gaze for a long moment, then tucked the invitation inside her armor. Decision made. Rose turned to leave, already disappearing back into the grit and motion of Atherin's rebuilding. Behind her, Nezra called once, quiet but sharp. Rose. Rose paused. If this meeting is a trap... Rose didn't turn around. Then make sure you're the one holding the knife, Nezra finished. Rose's mouth curved faintly. I always am, she said. And she walked on, leaving Atherin exactly as she found it. Not healed, but working. Chapter 16. Permission to Remember. Alfheim did not surprise people. It tested them. The portal opened onto white stone and living silver light, the air cool and clean in a way that made most visitors instinctively straighten their posture. Towers rose in elegant tiers, grown as much as built, their surfaces etched with runes so old they no longer announced themselves. Rose stepped through and stopped where protocol demanded. She didn't look around, she didn't wander, she waited. The elven guards approached in perfect symmetry, armor pale and luminous, blades resting, not raised, but present. Their expressions were calm, unreadable, and entirely uninterested in intimidation. Halt, one said, voice clear and measured. State your name and purpose. Rose, she replied evenly. I'm here at the request of Guardian Ambassador Aeliana Vale. A pause. Not suspicion. Verification. The second guard's eyes glimmered faintly as a rune flared to life along his bracer. He inclined his head slightly. "You are expected," he said. "Your clearance extends to the high archives." Rose nodded once. "That will be sufficient." They turned as one, gesturing her forward. Alfheim unfolded around her as she walked. Scholars crossed open courtyards, deep in discussion. Apprentices practiced controlled spell work beneath watchful instructors. The realm moved with purpose, not haste. No one rushed here, that they arrived when the moment was right. The archives rose ahead like a cathedral of memory. Layered terraces of crystal and stone spiraling upward. Light refracting through suspended glyphs that whispered softly as she passed. The doors opened before she reached them. Therion was already waiting. He stood just inside the threshold, tall and slender, hair silvered by centuries rather than age. His robes bore no rank markings beyond the subtle sigil of the archivist, etched so faintly it could be missed by anyone not meant to see it. "Rose," he said, "you walk carefully for someone who trades in disruption." "I respect places that remember consequences," Rose replied. Therion's mouth curved just barely. "That is why Aeliana trusted you with access." He turned and led her inside. The archives were quiet in the way only immense knowledge could afford to be. Endless shelves curved into the distance, holding not just books, but memory crystals, echo scrolls, living records bound in spell and thought. Therion stopped near a central dais. "You are not here to research," he said. "You are here to invite." "Yes, to neutral ground," he continued, "which means something has gone wrong." "Something is about to," Rose corrected gently. "And I'd like history present when it's addressed." Therion studied her for a long moment. "You seek a voice, not authority." "I seek continuity," Rose said. "Someone who understands what happens when realms stop speaking to one another." Therion nodded slowly. "I remember 3 such times." "That's why you're invited," Rose said, producing the card. She placed it on the dais. "Shadow Realm Bar," she continued. 2 days, limited attendance, no weapons." Therion did not touch it immediately. "Aeliana is already involved," he said. "Yes," Rose replied. "This is not for her. This is for Alfheim." Therion finally took the invitation, turning it once in his fingers. "Some will say this is beneath us," he said quietly. "They said that last time too," Rose replied. "You buried the cost." "That did it." Therion inclined his head, formal and precise. "Then Alfheim will be represented." He paused, eyes sharp despite their age. "You are gathering dangerous truths in a small room, Rose." "Yes." "And you are not asking permission." "No," Rose said. "I'm asking presence." Therion slid the invitation into his sleeve. "Then I will attend, and I will remember what is said there, exactly as it is spoken." Rose allowed herself a faint smile. "That's all I could ask." As she turned to leave, Therion added, "You walk an unusual path." Rose stopped but didn't turn around. "I don't belong to a realm anymore," she said. "Someone has to walk between them." She exited the archives, elven guards already moving to escort her back to the portal. Behind her, the archives whispered softly, shelves shifting as memory adjusted itself. Alfheim had agreed to listen. One realm remained. Chapter 17. The Broken Shield. Concordia smelled like rain-soaked stone and old smoke. The portal opened onto a narrow side street, where the lamps flickered instead of shone, and the buildings leaned just enough to suggest they were tired of standing. Rose stepped through and immediately drew looks. Not hostile. Curious. She didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. The broken shield squatted at the end of the street, like it had given up on dignity years ago. Its sign hung crooked on rusted chains, the painted emblem chipped and half scraped away. Once it might have meant something. Now it meant cheap drinks, bad stories, and people who preferred not to be noticed. Rose adjusted her coat and went inside. The noise hit first. Laughter. Arguments. The scrape of chairs across uneven floors. A bard in the corner was arguing with his own instrument. The air was thick with stale ale and damp wool. Every conversation slowed when Rose entered. She moved like she was used to better rooms. That alone made her stand out. Someone muttered, "Wrong bar," under their breath. Rose ignored them. Her eyes found Cale Varner immediately. He sat at a scarred table near the back to the wall, hood down, drink untouched. He wore plain clothes, no insignia, no rank, but the way the space bent subtly around him gave him away. Soldiers did that. Commanders did it more. Cale looked up as Rose approached. He didn't smile. "You're a long way from mirrors and marble," he said. "I needed somewhere honest," Rose replied, pulling out the chair across from him and sitting without asking. "This place qualifies." Cale snorted. "That's not a compliment." She leaned back, letting the bench creak. "It's a survival trait." A server appeared, took one look at Rose, and hesitated. Cale lifted 2 fingers. "Bring her whatever won't kill her." Rose arched an eyebrow. "Your faith in Concordia is touching." "You'll adapt," Cale said. "You always do." She studied him for a moment, then reached into her jacket and set the invitation on the table between them. He didn't touch it. "Shadow Realm Bar," he read aloud. "That's your idea of subtle." "It's my idea of controlled," Rose said. 2 days, neutral ground, no weapons. Cale finally picked it up, turning at once. "You're gathering people who don't like each other." "I'm gathering people who can't afford not to talk." He took a slow breath. Concordia doesn't sit well in rooms where neutrality is enforced. "Concordia needs to learn," Rose replied flatly. Cale's jaw tightened. "I work for you. That doesn't mean I answer for the city." "No," Rose said. "It means you understand consequences better than most." The server returned, slid a dark drink toward Rose. She sniffed it, decided it wouldn't kill her, and took a sip. Her expression tightened, then settled. "Brutal," she admitted. "I approve." Cale watched her over the rim of his glass. "If this goes wrong, Concordia bleeds." "If this doesn't happen," Rose replied, "Concordia gets dragged into someone else's war without a voice." Silence stretched between them, filled by the clatter of dice and a shouted argument at the bar. Cale folded the invitation and slipped it into his coat. "I'll be there." "I knew you would," Rose said. He met her gaze. "You're pulling on threads you don't control." Rose's smile was thin. "I never do." She stood, smoothing her coat, suddenly very out of place again. As she turned to leave, Cale spoke once more. "Rose." She paused. "You still don't belong anywhere," he said. Rose glanced back at him, eyes sharp and tired and honest. "That's why I can walk into all of them." She stepped back into the street, the door of the broken shield swinging shut behind her. Concordia kept drinking. The invitation was delivered, and every realm that mattered now knew where the next fracture might form. Chapter 18. What the Staff Remembers? The mess hall had settled into its usual rhythm. Conversation flowed around them in low currents. Bianca moved behind the counter with practiced efficiency. The smell of warm food and coffee cut through the constant edge of readiness that lived in the den. Gunnar sat across from Aeliana, plate half finished. He hadn't realized when he stopped eating. She had. "You're staring," she said gently. He blinked, refocused, glanced down at his food like it had personally offended him. "Thinking." "That's usually the look you get when something's bothering you," she replied. He huffed quietly. "I'm an open book." She smiled, faint but real. They sat in silence for a few more seconds. Comfortable. Familiar. The kind of quiet that only came after everything else had been said. Or avoided. Gunnar finally spoke. "When Rose left," he said, voice low, "you went distant." Aeliana's fingers paused on her cup. "I wasn't trying to," she said after a moment. "I know." He leaned back slightly, careful not to crowd her. "I just want to know what you remember." She exhaled slowly. "The vision," she said. Not a question. "Yes." Aeliana looked down at the table, eyes unfocused as she replayed fragments that refused to align neatly. "It wasn't clear," she said, "not like the old ones. No structure, no warning." Gunnar's jaw tightened. He knew what that meant. "I saw a child," she continued quietly. "But not a child. Older. 5 years, maybe. His body had grown, but his mind hadn't. He felt wrong. Displaced." Gunnar's hand curled slowly against the edge of the table. "And Syrien," she added. "Standing in a chamber of heat and stone. Lava beneath her. Not raging. Focused. Working." "That tracks," Gunnar muttered. Aeliana looked back up at him. "And Maelorion." That got his full attention. "He was stressed," she said, "not frightened, calculating like he knows more than he's saying and doesn't like what it means." Gunnar was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once. "That settles it," he said. Aeliana tilted her head. "What does?" "We go see him," Gunnar replied. "Now. Before the meeting. Before anyone else starts pretending they've got this under control." Aeliana hesitated. "Maelorion doesn't share easily." "I know," Gunnar said. "But he shares eventually. And I'm done waiting for eventually." She studied him then. Really looked. The exhaustion sat deeper than before. Not physical. Strategic. The kind that came from carrying too many futures at once. "He won't like this," she said. Gunnar stood, sliding his chair back. "He rarely does." He offered her his hand, not as command, not as alpha, as partner. "If the staff is speaking again," he said quietly, "then someone's already moved a piece we can't see, and Maelorion has always been better at hiding the board than playing fair." Aeliana took his hand. "Then we go," she said. They left the mess hall together, plates forgotten, conversation rising again behind them as if nothing had shifted. But something had. And somewhere far from the den, fate adjusted its grip. Because two people who were never meant to ask permission had decided to stop waiting for answers. Chapter 19. The Long Walk to Answers. The portal to Alfheim opened without ceremony. It never did for them. Silver light spilled across white stone, cool air carrying the faint scent of living leaves and ancient magic. Alfheim stood, as it always had, calm, ordered, endlessly patient. A realm that believed time would eventually explain everything if you let it. Gunnar stepped through first, not because he had to, because that's who he was. Aeliana followed, the staff of realms resting against her back, quiet now. Too quiet. The kind of silence that didn't mean peace so much as attention. The guards recognized them immediately. No challenge, no delay. They bowed just enough to acknowledge rank without worship, then stepped aside as one. Word had already moved ahead of them. Alfheim always knew when its guardian ambassador returned. They walked. Long corridors of pale stone, curved gently upward, runes embedded in the walls pulsing faintly as they passed. Scholars paused in their work. Apprentices straightened. Conversations softened, then resumed once the two had gone by. Gunnar noticed it all. Feels like being measured, he muttered. Aeliana gave a small smile. You are. That's comforting. They didn't head toward the archives this time. They went deeper. Past places meant for study and memory, and into corridors few walked, unless summoned. The air grew cooler. Older, magic here wasn't decorative, it was structural. Aeliana slowed slightly as they approached a sealed archway etched with layered sigils. This is as far as we go together without permission, she said. Gunnar nodded, eyes on the markings. He knows we're here. He knew before we stepped through the portal, she replied. A pause settled between them, not awkward, anticipatory. Gunnar exhaled slowly. Before we go in, we need to be clear. Aeliana turned to face him. No deflection, he continued. No half answers. If he knows something about Syrien, about the child, about what the staff is reacting to, he tells us, or I stop playing respectful. Her expression softened, then sharpened with resolve. Maelorion doesn't respond well to pressure. He responds worse to being ignored, Gunnar said evenly. She considered that, then nodded once. Then we go in together. As equals. He reached out, resting his hand briefly against hers. Grounding. Real. Whatever he says, Gunnar added quietly. We don't let it fracture us. Not now. Aeliana closed her fingers around his. Agreed. The sigils on the chamber door shifted, light threading through ancient runes as the wards acknowledged her presence. The door had not opened yet. On the other side, Maelorion waited. And whatever truths he had buried beneath centuries of caution were about to be disturbed. Chapter 20. Anchors. The chamber listened. Ancient stone curved overhead, runes embedded so deeply they no longer glowed unless something disturbed the balance they were meant to preserve. The air was cool, layered with wards old enough to remember wars no one named anymore. Maelorion stood at the center. He did not turn when Gunnar and Aeliana entered. You came sooner than I expected, he said calmly. Then you expected us, Gunnar replied. Maelorion turned then, eyes sharp, tired and entirely too perceptive. His gaze passed over Gunnar's cybernetic arm, the eye patch, the posture of a man who had survived too many endings. Then it settled on Aeliana. The staff of realms shifted slightly against her back. Maelorion's brow furrowed. The staff stirred, he said. Aeliana nodded. It didn't warn, it reacted. Maelorion gestured once. Tell me what you saw. All of it? Do not interpret. Aeliana drew a steadying breath. It came in fragments, she said. Not in sequence. She closed her eyes briefly, grounding herself. A child, she continued. Physically older than an infant. 5 years, perhaps, but his mind was wrong. Too small. Unformed. He felt unfinished, like something had been forced forward before it was ready. Gunnar's jaw tightened. Aeliana opened her eyes again. I saw Syrien, she said quietly. Not raging, focused, standing in a chamber lit by molten stone, lava beneath her feet. She wasn't performing. She was working. Maelorion's expression darkened. And? He prompted. A traitor, Aeliana added. Broken, on the ground, discarded, not important to her anymore. Maelorion nodded slowly. And Maelorion, Gunnar said flatly. She saw you. Aeliana looked at him. You were stressed, not afraid, calculating, like you knew what it meant and didn't like the timing. Silence followed. Not denial. Recognition. Maelorion folded his hands behind his back. That was not prophecy, he said at last. What you experienced was resonance. Aeliana frowned. Explain. The Staff of Realms does not predict, Maelorion said. It responds when something crosses a threshold powerful enough to echo through the lattice that binds realms together. He turned slightly, pacing now. The child you saw is a temporal distortion, accelerated flesh, arrested mind, the result of forced maturation rituals, not meant to live, meant to arrive. Aeliana's breath caught. The chamber, Maelorion continued, was not symbolic. It was a forge site, a place where essence, will, and matter are being bound. Syrien is no longer improvising. Gunnar's voice was low. She's executing a plan. Yes, Maelorion said. A process. And you've seen this before, Aeliana said. Maelorion stopped pacing. I have seen the pattern, he corrected. Once, long ago. The records were buried because the outcome nearly fractured the Guardian Council itself. Gunnar crossed his arms. Convenient. Necessary, Maelorion replied calmly. History is not always ready to be remembered. Aeliana stepped forward. The shadow realm bar at me, it matters. Maelorion's gaze sharpened. Neutral ground becomes dangerous when too many truths arrive at once. It's already happening, Gunnar said. You won't stop it. No, Maelorion agreed. I will not. That surprised them. I will not endorse you, he continued, and I will not shield you, but I will not pretend I do not see what you are doing. Aeliana swallowed. Then tell us what comes next. Maelorion studied them both for a long moment. There are outcomes, he said quietly, in which you survive, and wish you had not. The words settled heavily. If Syrien learns of the meeting before it concludes, he added, she will move. Not afterward. During. Gunnar nodded once. Then we move faster. Maelorion inclined his head. If you are going to disrupt the balance, do it cleanly. The realms forgive violence sooner than confusion. Silence returned. Then Maelorion's gaze shifted. Not to the staff, not to the scars, to the space between them. You are both anchoring forces now, he said softly, whether you intend to be or not. Aeliana felt it before he finished. Have you decided, Maelorion asked calmly, where and when you will be married? The question landed harder than any warning. No date, no place, Maelorion observed, not accusing. You may wish to decide soon, he said quietly. Anchors placed too late tend to drift. The chamber fell silent again. Not with fear. With consequence?
You know the drill. Like the video and subscribe to the channel right here.